When you stand before a mirror, what do you see? Most people see only the reflection of their body, their face, their posture, their clothing, but very few look deeply enough to see the reflection of their mind. The mirror does not lie. It shows us not only the physical self, but also how we choose to perceive it. In that moment, you are not only looking at yourself, you are also looking into yourself. And that is where real growth begins. The mirror of the mind is not made of glass, it is made of awareness. Each thought, each emotion, each reaction, these are reflections showing you the condition of your inner world. If anger arises easily, it reflects restlessness. If fear appears often, it reflects attachment. If peace arises effortlessly, it reflects balance. When you train in martial arts, you repeat the same movements again and again, not because the body needs it, but because the mind needs it. Repetition is a mirror. It shows you whether you are patient, whether you are focused, whether you are honest with yourself. Self-reflection is not an act of judgment. It is not about finding fault. It is about seeing clearly. You cannot clean a mirror by striking it. You clean it by wiping away the dust gently. The same is true for the mind. When you start to reflect daily, through meditation, silence, or simple awareness, you begin to notice patterns. You see how your thoughts shape your emotions, and how your emotions shape your life. You realize the outer world is only a projection of the inner one. The true warrior is not the one who conquers others, but the one who looks into the mirror of his own mind and conquers himself. Every reflection is an invitation to transform. So, the next time you look into the mirror, don't just adjust your hair, adjust your awareness. Look deeper than your face. Look into the stillness behind your thoughts. That is where your true self resides, unchanging, infinite, and free. Only when the mirror of the mind becomes clean and still, does it reflect reality as it truly is. And in that moment, inner growth becomes effortless, because the one who sees clearly no longer needs to change the world, he only needs to understand himself. When we speak of awareness as a mirror, we are pointing to one of the most profound truths of human existence, that the world you perceive is not truly out there, but rather a reflection of your inner state. The eyes may open outward, but consciousness looks inward. Just as a physical mirror reflects what stands before it, awareness reflects the contents of the mind, thoughts, emotions, memories, and desires. Most people walk through life believing that what they see and experience is fixed, independent of them. But if you begin to observe carefully, you will notice how your perception changes depending on the quality of your awareness. When the mind is calm, even a cloudy sky looks peaceful. When the mind is disturbed, even a beautiful sunrise seems heavy. The outer world has not changed, only the reflection has. Awareness, therefore, is not just a passive witness, it is an active mirror shaping how you experience everything. To understand this mirror, one must first see that it is constantly being clouded by internal dust, thoughts, judgments, fears, and desires. Imagine standing before a mirror covered with dirt. No matter how bright the light, your reflection will appear distorted. In the same way, when the mirror of awareness is clouded by mental noise, your perception of life becomes unclear. You may misinterpret a friend's silence as rejection, or see obstacles where there are none. It is not the world that is unfriendly. It is your awareness that has become foggy. The art of self-cultivation begins when you stop blaming the reflection and start cleaning the mirror. Each breath you take with mindfulness, each moment you spend observing rather than reacting, is a gentle act of polishing. Slowly, the layers of confusion thin out. Clarity begins to emerge. And with that clarity, you begin to see the world and yourself as they truly are. This awareness is not limited to meditation halls or spiritual retreats. It must be practiced in the midst of life. The mirror of the mind is always reflecting, Whether you are sitting in silence or standing in a crowded street, every conversation, every conflict, every joy is an opportunity to observe how your awareness responds. If someone praises you and you feel inflated, the mirror shows attachment. If someone criticizes you and you feel anger, the mirror shows insecurity. Life becomes your teacher when you use it as a reflection surface. The wise do not run away from discomfort. They use it to see where the mirror is still unclean. In this way, awareness becomes both the path and the teacher. You do not need to force change. You only need to look deeply. For what is seen clearly begins to transform naturally. Awareness reveals the hidden patterns that were shaping your actions unconsciously, allowing you to step out of them with understanding rather than resistance. But awareness is more than observation, it is presence. When you are fully aware, you are not lost in thought, memory, or imagination. You are here, in this very moment, undivided. This presence is like a clear, still lake reflecting the sky, perfectly accurate, untouched by distortion. In such a state, even pain becomes meaningful, even uncertainty becomes gentle. You no longer struggle against what is, you simply see it. This is what it means when masters say, see with the heart, not with the eyes. Awareness allows you to perceive life without the filter of ego. It opens a space within where understanding and peace naturally arise. And in that stillness, the mirror of the mind does not merely reflect, it illuminates. It shows you that awareness itself was never clouded, only your attention was. The mirror was always pure, but you had forgotten to look directly into it. When you return to this scene, when awareness recognizes itself, the illusion of separation begins to fade. You start to realize that the world you once thought was external is actually your own consciousness taking form. The people, events, and situations around you are not random. They are reflections helping you see what is within. This insight is not philosophical, it is deeply practical. It changes how you move through life. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond with understanding. Instead of chasing peace, you cultivate awareness, and peace follows like a shadow. To live with awareness is to live in truth. It means allowing the mirror of your mind to show everything, the beautiful and the painful, without turning away. You do not deny what you see, nor do you cling to it. You simply observe, with honesty and compassion. This is the beginning of wisdom, because the moment you see clearly, you become free. Free from the illusions that once ruled you, free from the constant need to change what is already perfect in its imperfection. Awareness teaches you that clarity is not something to be gained, it is something to be uncovered. Like the mirror beneath the dust, it was always there, waiting for you to remember. The act of self-reflection is often misunderstood as an act of self-criticism. Many people, when turning inward, do so with the harsh eyes of judgment. They look at their thoughts, actions, and mistakes as if standing trial before their own conscience. But this is not reflection. This is condemnation. True reflection is not about labeling yourself as good or bad. It is about observing what is. It is the quiet recognition of the patterns within you without the need to define them. When you judge yourself, you create resistance, and resistance strengthens the very habit you wish to overcome. But when you reflect without judgment, something profound happens. Awareness begins to transform what it sees. Like the sun melting ice, pure attention dissolves confusion. You begin to understand that the purpose of self-reflection is not to punish yourself for being imperfect, but to understand your imperfection deeply enough that wisdom grows from it. In the same way a mirror does not criticize the face it reflects, awareness does not criticize what appears within it. The mirror simply shows what is, a wrinkle, a scar, a smile without preference or rejection. It is neutral, silent, and clear. If you look into the mirror and dislike what you see, the problem is not with the mirror. Similarly, when you look within and find anger, jealousy, or fear, These are not signs of failure, they are opportunities to understand the truth of your own mind. The judgmental mind says, I should not feel this. The reflective mind says, this feeling is here. One rejects, the other accepts. One closes the door to growth, the other opens it. Reflection without judgment is the space where healing begins. It allows the mind to reveal its hidden layers, not out of shame but out of trust. Just as you cannot clean a wound by ignoring it, you cannot purify the mind by condemning it. You must look with patience and compassion into every corner of your being. Judgment divides, it separates the good self from the bad self, creating conflict within. Reflection unites, it brings light to both sides, revealing that they are parts of the same whole. When you judge yourself harshly, you become trapped in a cycle of guilt and defense. You either suppress what you dislike or overcompensate by pretending to be someone you are not. But when you reflect honestly, you stop hiding from yourself. You begin to see that every emotion, no matter how dark, carries a message. Anger shows where boundaries were crossed. Fear shows where trust has not yet developed. Sadness shows what still needs to be released. Each experience, when observed without judgment, becomes a teacher. Through this process, you no longer divide your mind into what should be accepted and what should be rejected. You begin to see everything as part of the same vast field of awareness, transient, meaningful, and worthy of understanding. To reflect without judgment requires great courage. It means standing naked before your own consciousness, without the armor of excuses or self-deception. It is not a passive act, but an act of strength, the strength to see truth as it is. When you stop judging, you stop running. You become still enough to truly listen. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. Understanding replaces shame, clarity replaces confusion, and compassion replaces fear. You start to treat yourself as a human being, rather than an idea of perfection. This gentle acceptance does not make you weak, it makes you free. For when you no longer need to be perfect, you finally have the energy to grow. Reflection over judgment transforms self-awareness into wisdom. It turns pain into purpose, failure into learning, and imperfection into depth. The mind that reflects with compassion sees not a problem to fix, but a being to understand, and in that understanding, the roots of growth are quietly nourished. When you begin to look within through the lens of awareness, you start to notice that your thoughts, emotions, and reactions are not random, they are patterns. These patterns are like invisible rivers flowing beneath the surface of consciousness, shaping how you speak, act, and feel every day. You might believe you are making free choices, but in truth, much of life is guided by these unseen forces. From childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, and past wounds, the mind develops repetitive habits of perception. You may find yourself reacting with anger to the same type of situation, withdrawing in fear when facing uncertainty, or seeking validation whenever you feel unseen. These are not coincidences, they are deeply rooted mental patterns. To recognize them is the first step toward freedom. Awareness acts as a light in a dark room. It reveals what has been hidden. The more you observe without interference, the clearer these patterns become. You begin to see not only what you do, but why you do it. And this why is the key that unlocks transformation. Every pattern carries both energy and memory. The energy gives it strength, the memory gives it continuity. When a certain thought or emotion repeats often enough, it becomes like a groove in the mind, a habit of being. This is why people often say, I don't know why I always end up here again. It is because the pattern has not been understood. The mind, like water, follows the path of least resistance. Unless you consciously redirect it, it flows where it has always flowed. To break a pattern, you must first see it clearly, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. For example, if you always seek approval from others, instead of condemning yourself for being insecure, ask, what am I truly seeking? Perhaps it is love, recognition, or safety. Once you see the deeper need behind the pattern, it begins to lose its unconscious grip. The moment awareness touches a pattern fully, without judgment or resistance, transformation begins naturally. You don't need to fight your habits, you need to understand them. The mind repeats what it has not resolved. Like an echo in a canyon, unhealed emotions continue to return until they are heard. The purpose of these recurring patterns is not to punish you, but to awaken you. Life keeps presenting the same lessons in different forms because awareness has not yet fully penetrated them. A relationship might end, but the same emotional struggle appears with another person. You might leave a job or move to a new place, yet the same frustration follows. Until you turn inward, the outer world will continue to mirror your inner landscape. The patterns of the mind are not obstacles to spiritual growth, they are the path to it. They show you precisely where your attention, compassion, and understanding are needed. Each recurring experience is an invitation to pause and ask, what is this trying to teach me? When you start to see life through this lens, even difficulties become sacred mirrors, reflecting the parts of yourself still waiting to be seen and healed. To work with mental patterns is to practice deep honesty. It requires the willingness to face discomfort, the fear, anger, sadness, and insecurity that you have tried to avoid. Most people attempt to escape their patterns through distraction, denial, or constant activity, but avoidance only strengthens what is unacknowledged. True freedom lies in turning toward your inner repetition with awareness and curiosity. Sit quietly, breathe, and observe. Watch how certain thoughts arise automatically when you feel threatened or unloved. See how the mind tells stories to protect its identity. Over time, this observation reveals that you are not the pattern, you are the awareness watching it. This realization changes everything. The more you identify with awareness, the less control the old patterns have over you. They may still arise, but they lose their power to dominate. Like waves on the surface of a calm ocean, they come and go, but they no longer disturb the depth beneath. In this way, understanding the patterns of the mind becomes not just an intellectual exercise but a sacred process, one through which the unconscious is illuminated, and the inner self begins to awaken to its true nature. To master the self is not to control it by force but to understand it so deeply that control becomes unnecessary. Many people confuse self-mastery with suppression, the idea that to be strong means to dominate emotions, silence desires, and restrain impulses. But suppression is not mastery, it is fear disguised as discipline. True mastery arises not from rejection but from awareness. When you see yourself clearly, your habits, your reactions, your weaknesses, and your strengths, you begin to act from understanding rather than compulsion. The ancient masters never sought to destroy their humanity, they sought to illuminate it. To master the self is to make peace with the full range of your being, the light and the shadow, the calm and the chaos. It is to stand in the center of your inner storm and know that you are not the wind nor the thunder but the space in which they arise. The path to self-mastery begins with self-observation. The untrained mind is like a wild horse, strong, full of potential but easily distracted and uncontrollable. The master does not break the horse, he builds trust with it. In the same way, the spiritual practitioner learns to observe the mind without harshness. When anger appears, the master sees it rise and fall without feeding it. When fear whispers, he listens but does not obey. Every emotion, every thought becomes a lesson in awareness. Through patient observation, the chaos of the mind begins to settle. This is not because thoughts have stopped, but because attachment to them has weakened. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness in which they appear. From this recognition, inner strength naturally emerges. You no longer react blindly to the world, you respond consciously from a place of balance. This is the essence of mastery, not the absence of emotion, but the freedom from being ruled by it. To master yourself, you must first understand the forces that move within you. Desire, fear, pride, doubt. These are not enemies to be conquered, but energies to be understood. Each carries its own wisdom if you are willing to listen. Desire teaches direction, fear teaches caution, pride teaches self-respect, doubt teaches discernment. When you suppress these forces, they rebel. When you understand them, they harmonize. Self-mastery is therefore a process of integration. You are bringing the fragmented parts of your being into alignment with your higher awareness. Imagine an orchestra. If every instrument plays its own tune, there is only noise. But when they follow the same rhythm, music is born. The same is true within you. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are guided by conscious awareness, life moves in harmony. You stop fighting yourself. Energy that was once wasted on inner conflict becomes available for creativity, purpose, and peace. The great paradox of mastery is that it cannot be achieved by striving. The more you try to control yourself, the tighter the chains become. Control is a product of fear, the fear of losing order, the fear of being imperfect, the fear of the unknown. But mastery grows from trust, trust in awareness, trust in the natural intelligence of life itself. The more you trust, the more you let go of the need to force change. You begin to live from a state of inner flow where discipline arises effortlessly, not as a burden but as an expression of clarity. You no longer need to fight your impulses because understanding has already transformed them. You no longer need to prove strength because you have realized that gentleness is strength. The master is not the one who never falls, but the one who no longer fears falling because he knows that even in falling, awareness remains untouched. To master the self is to awaken to this timeless awareness, the silent witness behind all experience, and from that awareness, to live with intention, peace, and authenticity. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it is the presence of awareness that does not waver no matter how much movement occurs around it. To the untrained mind, stillness appears lifeless, like a stagnant pond, but to the awakened mind, stillness is vibrantly alive, like a deep silent ocean that supports every wave yet is disturbed by none. When the mind is constantly rushing, thinking, reacting, and analyzing, clarity becomes impossible. It's like trying to see your reflection in rippling water. Everything is distorted. In contrast, when the waters of the mind become still, the truth of reality reflects itself effortlessly. You begin to perceive things as they are, not as you imagine them to be. This is why great masters speak of stillness not as an achievement but as a natural state that arises when resistance ends. You don't need to create stillness, you only need to stop disturbing it. Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the storms of emotion, stillness is always there, silent, steady, and pure. Clarity arises naturally from this stillness. It is not something you can think your way into. It does not come from knowledge, but from seeing directly. When the mind is noisy, it becomes clouded by interpretation, bias, and fear. You see the world not as it is, but as your conditioning allows you to see it. But when stillness is cultivated, through meditation, deep breathing, or simple awareness, the layers of distortion begin to dissolve. You start to notice the space between thoughts, the silence between sounds, the pause between breaths. In that space, clarity dawns, not as an effort but as an awakening. You understand without analysis, and you see without the need for conclusion. Decisions become simpler, emotions lose their turbulence, and life itself feels lighter. This clarity is not cold or detached, it is deeply compassionate. Because when you see clearly, you no longer project your pain onto others. You understand that everyone is struggling with the same mind-made storms, and from that understanding, patience and kindness arise effortlessly. The world we live in constantly pulls us away from this stillness. Every sound, notification, and thought demands attention. The modern mind has become addicted to motion, not just physical motion but mental motion. We fear silence because it reveals what we have long ignored within ourselves. Yet it is precisely in silence that healing occurs. Stillness is the medicine for the restless mind. It allows the body to reset, the emotions to balance, and the spirit to remember its true nature. When you sit in stillness, you begin to hear the subtle whispers of life, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the flow of your breath, the quiet intelligence that animates all things. Gradually, you realize that stillness is not something you enter into, it is what you are. Everything else, thoughts, sensations, emotions, arises within this vast silence. This recognition is liberating. You stop chasing peace outside yourself because you recognize that peace was never lost. It was simply buried under the noise of distraction. Clarity born of stillness transforms the way you live. When your inner world becomes quiet, you begin to act not from confusion or reaction but from wisdom. You no longer rush decisions because you can feel the right response arise naturally from within. You no longer seek approval because you are no longer disconnected from yourself. The master's mind is still, not because he has no thoughts, but because he is no longer enslaved by them. Thoughts may come and go, but they no longer define his state. This is the essence of clarity, to see the impermanent as impermanent, and the eternal as eternal. When clarity flowers, even simple things become profound. A breath feels sacred. A moment of silence feels infinite. You begin to recognize that life's greatest truths are not hidden in complexity, but revealed in simplicity. And it is in this simplicity, the quiet awareness of being, that stillness and clarity merge, reflecting the true mirror of the awakened mind. And so when the mirror of the mind becomes still and clear, life itself transforms. You no longer move through the world as someone chasing answers. You move as one who has understood that every experience, every person, and every challenge is part of your reflection. The world stops being an enemy to overcome and becomes a teacher whispering truth through every moment. This is the quiet power of self-reflection and inner growth. It does not demand that you escape life, but that you enter it fully, with open eyes and a still heart. In stillness, you realize that growth was never about becoming something different, but about returning to what has always been pure within you. The more you polish the mirror of awareness, the more you recognize that clarity, compassion, and wisdom were never absent. They were only hidden beneath layers of distraction and fear. The journey inward is not a path of addition but of removal. You are not becoming more, you are becoming real. When self-reflection deepens, you begin to see that every moment is sacred. The ordinary becomes extraordinary because your awareness is present within it. A simple breath becomes meditation, a silent glance becomes understanding, and in this presence, you find a peace that cannot be taken by circumstance or shaken by time. This peace is not a destination, it is your natural state. So remember, the mirror of your mind is your greatest teacher. Look into it daily, not to judge, but to understand. Observe the ripples, but seek the stillness beneath them. The more you practice awareness, the clearer your reflection becomes. And when you can finally look into that mirror and see no distortion, no confusion, only the quiet depth of being, you will realize that you have not just found yourself, you have remembered yourself.